Hi everyone, and thank you for joining. We are looking at some homework questions, and these questions were actually assigned for review for unit number 1 test, which is about rates of change and the first principles, determining the derivatives by using the first principles. So what we have in this case is question 9e from the textbook, page 83. Uh, the function y equals square root of x minus 2 multiplied by 3 root x plus 8. And we have to find the slope of the tangent at the point P with coordinates 4 and 0. So to find the slope of the tangent, we need to find the derivative of this function. As you can see, what we have in here is two binomials multiplied, and we don't know, we haven't learned yet how to find or how to determine the derivative from the product of two binomials. The only rule, differentiation rule we have learned is what we call the power rule, which states that if a term x to the power of n is differentiated, then the derivative of it would be nx to the power of n minus 1. So in order to use this rule, we will need to write this function in terms of these type of terms. So we have to write every term in the function in power form. So in other words, we will need to expand and simplify and write every term here in power form. So let's get started. We have to rewrite the equation of the function y equals, and I am going to write the square roots as exponential numbers. So x to the power 1 over 2 minus 2. And then we have 3x to the power of 1 over 2 minus 8. So let's start expanding now. We have 3 and x to the power 1 over 2 times x power 1 over 2 would give 3x to the power of 1 over 2 plus 1 over 2. And then next we multiply x to the power 1 over 2 times negative 8, so that's negative 8x to the power of 1 over 2. And then we have negative 2 multiplying every term in the next binomial, so negative 2 times 3, negative 6x to the power of a half. And lastly, we have negative 2 times negative 8, which is 16. So y equals 3x, so this would be 1. And here you see two like terms, negative 8 and negative 6, x to the power of 1 over 2. So the variable part is the same, which allows these two terms to combine together and make a negative 14, x to the power of 1 half, and then plus 16. So now we start differentiating, and we'll say that the derivative d dx of this function y would be equal to, so we take the derivative of every term, so that would be equal to 3. And remember that when we have the derivative of a linear term, the rate of change is the same as the slope, so just 3. If you want to look at it from the algebraic point of view, that would be equal to exponent 1 becomes a coefficient, and x to the power of 1 minus 1 will make a 0 in the exponent, which will make this entire term x to the power 0 equal to 1. So we went over this in class, so I'm just going to leave it at 3 here. And then we'll differentiate negative 14 x to the power 1 over 2. Remember, when we differentiate, the only variable that will affect the rate of change would be the part of the term that affects the rate of change is the one that carries a variable, because that's the changing power or the changing factor in here. So number 14 will stay as is, so minus 14. And then 1 half x to the power of 1 over 2 minus 1. And lastly, we have the derivative of a constant, which is equal to 0. So we'll simplify this. We have 3, negative 14, and 2 will simplify to negative 7. We have x to the power of 1 over 2 minus 1 is negative half, and then plus 0, obviously we don't have to write it. I'll write it in a more simplified form with positive exponents. And this would be 3 minus 7 divided by x to the power of 1 over 2. And since we are actually evaluating soon, I would write x to the power of 1 over 2 better as the square root of x. Now remember that we're trying to find the slope of the tangent drawn at the point where x equals 4 and y equals 0. So in other words, we're finding the slope of the tangent, which equals basically the derivative of this function, so d dx of y, measured at x equals 4. So I would write x equals 4 here on the side to indicate that's the number I'm using here. And we're going to say that this would be 3 minus 7 divided by the square root of number 4. And that would give, obviously you can use a calculator for speed, but this is an easy division to perform. So minus 7 over 2. So that means 3 minus 3.5, that's negative 0.5, so, or negative 1 over 2. So therefore, we're going to say that the slope of the tangent drawn at x equals 4, y equals 0, so at point P would be equal to negative 1 over 2. I hope this made sense, and stay tuned for the rest of the questions. Bye for now.